Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm well. How are you, Nilika?
Good to see you. So
Are we all
we'll start the meeting in 2 minutes. Let
okay?
the people, join in. Yeah.
Okay. No. You're in Delhi now?
I'm in Delhi. What about you?
We're in Dehradun.
Okay.
We live here now. So.
I know. Please say my hello to Harmala. I just saw her.
Yeah. This is her machine.
Okay.
So
I can see others are there. Professor Sahu, President, and ISS. Abhijit is there. Aparna, Vinod Jairath.
They're all here?
Many people have joined in. Yeah.
Hello, Nilika.
Hello. So I'm just waiting for Professor Sahu to give me a signal. Professor Arvinder is there?
I just saw Professor Sahu.
Yeah, I'm there. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Just give us a signal.
Yes.
No, actually, we are waiting for Arvinder to join.
Yes. Arvinder is the secretary of
Okay.
ISS. Anuja is also there.
Yeah.
Can you do mind? Do we go in serially or how do we go?
Yeah, I think I'll invite you first if you
Because I have
so
to go
wish.
somewhere else.
Yeah, that's true.
If you don't
So
mind.
we'll have a bit of a formality in the beginning and followed by your take.
I'll just get my thing because I have to leave very soon.
Okay. Okay. So, Professor Sahu, should we begin?
Let's begin, Dr. Professor Sahu.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, everybody. And on behalf of Indian Sociological Society, we have a very bad time, particularly in the beginning of 2026. We lost many eminent scholars and many senior members of our society, and particularly Professor N.K. Bhargava, Professor André Béteille, Professor T.K. Uman, and Professor P.K. Nair. And we thought of organizing a meeting, online meeting, in memory of all these eminent scholars and sociologists, and Indian Sociological Society organize this particular online program to have some kind of interactions about their work, about their contributions, so that this will be a kind of a remembering all our senior scholars, so that we can keep it as a kind of memory in the website of Indian Sociological Society. And I'm very grateful Professor Nilika Mehrotra has also agreed to moderate the session. And I'm sure Professor Arvinder Ansari and all the managing committee members and all the research committee conveners and all the senior scholars who are present here, so that we can listen to all of them and their voices about their reflections about Professor André Béteille, who is known for his work and who is one of the considered to be the best teachers in sociology. Many people have acknowledged about his teaching quality and all kind of serious research work. And with this note, I welcome all the senior scholars, Professor Dipankar, Professor Gopal Severbal, Professor Abhijit Dasgupta, Professor Sukant Chaudhary, Professor Somen Patnaik, and Professor Vinod Jairath, and many others who are there. And we will be. I request Professor Nilika, you can start with the program and you can moderate the session. And with this note, I hand over to Professor Nilika to invite Professor Arvinder Ansari, the Secretary of Indian Sociological Society.
Okay. Thank you, Professor Sahu, for giving me this opportunity. Without wasting any time, I'll invite Professor Arvinder Ansari to briefly introduce the program.
Thank you, Professor Sahu, and thank you, Professor Nilika. This is the initiative of ISS that we really want to institutionalize the memories of our senior scholars. It's really very, very unfortunate that we have been losing one after another, all our senior. I think in 1 month there has been four, we have written 4 obituaries, which is very painful. We are trying, that we can have these reflections recorded and put on our website so that, our young scholars who are there can know about these scholars. I'm sure there is, their writings are there, but still, I mean, it's very important. And this is an initiative on the part of ISS. And I would really like to pay my homage and tribute to Professor André Béteille, who was an institution in himself, and the way he has influenced the understanding of social stratification, the question of caste, and of late his concern with the higher education is something which is very important. I know we have a very less time. I mean, we have to finish this in an hour's time. So I request Professor Nilika to go ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Ansari. Now I take this opportunity to invite Professor Dipankar Gupta, who has been a long associate of Professor Beteille, to say a few words.
Thank you very much, Nilika. Thank you very much. As Arvinder just said, it is really sad that so many of our eminent scholars have left us. And indeed, Professor Beteille's departure has been very, very unfortunate. Yes, I was very close to him, and I benefited a lot from his sagacious advice from time to time. But more than anything else, he was kind of a role model of how an intellectual should behave, not only in terms of academic work, but otherwise as a scholar in general. He was always very hesitant to be involved in anything that was, how should I say, where there was passion and fur flying and loud voices. He always preferred a moderate tone, which is why when I was compiling his work in this volume called Anti-Utopia, he chose the title himself. He said that I don't believe in utopias, and therefore he said, I would like this collection of my essays that you are compiling, or writings rather, I would like that to be Anti-Utopia as a title. And that was quite fitting. It is not as if he was timorous of utopias, except that he used to question utopias, because he felt that in terms of what they were putting forward, there wasn't much in-depth thinking. There was only passion, which is what I think drew him to Max Weber, because Max Weber also made a distinction between politics of responsibility and politics of commitment. And I think Professor Beteille believed in the same thing as well. In fact, if one goes back to his earliest writing, Caste, Class and Power, you'll find that is where he brings Max Weber into the picture very frontally. And I think this is the first time, perhaps, that a major fieldwork village study has integrated scholarship of that order into the description of the material. So what do we have in Caste, Class and Power is a Max Weberian notion that there are 3 axes, and all 3 are important, and we should pay attention to all of them. We all know of the fact that he was very close to Professor M.N. Srinivas, and he was with the Delhi School of Economics for 40 years. And yet he was also, I would say, Well, questioning all those he was whom he used to admire. In fact, he once told me that he learned a lot more from people he disagreed with than with people he agreed with. In a sense, like Levi Strauss had once said that he was a kind of a rack picker of history. Professor Beteille said that he used to scavenge on the work of other scholars. And the scavenging he found was very fruitful. And from scavenging on Marx, scavenging on Weber, he learned a lot. And if I may add, scavenging on M.N. Srinivas as well. He was not really a Srinivasian in that sense. He didn't believe in the functionalist outlook. But nevertheless, he felt that Srinivas had a kind of uh, perception of things, insight into things that was almost unparalleled, at least in terms of Indian sociology. The other thing which I must remark upon is that when he discussed institutions, and in the last 20 years or so, he wrote a lot about institutions, which includes universities, and Arvind mentioned that in a presentation. He emphasized the fact that there's something called institutional well-being, and we should not forsake that notion in search of political mileage. Institutions have their own, own necessities, and they should be looked at as well carefully. And for that, he believed that there should be some level of institutional trust. Okay, now the question is, how do we build institutional trust? So his point of view was that, you set up your own standards. Don't have to look at the West. You have a university, you have a hospital, you have a corporate world, whatever. Set up your own standards. And once you set your own standards, abide by them. Don't violate them. If you abide by the standards you have set, you will then, provide a benchmark as to how other people should look at you. And that is how institutional trust comes into being. Which is why I feel that when we think about caste, reservations, politics, etc., and the fact that in our country today, and if truth be told, there is a lack of institutional trust. And that is probably because the most people who lead institutions don't abide by the standards they should have set for themselves before setting it for others. So in that sense, I think Professor Beteille's work, both in terms of his fieldwork, his understanding of institutions, his interventions in the caste debate, where he was very skeptical of, opening up the doors to reservations without close scrutiny. He was, by the way, a great supporter of reservations, but he said that equality of opportunity is very important, and it should not be, used as a kind of shouldn't be used in ideological terms, but in terms of institutions. How best can institutions be served through the medium of reservations? So in many ways, I would say that Professor Beteille's works will last for a long time in our minds, simply because of the wide-ranging scholarship. He was also a person who, no matter which area you picked up on, he somehow was able to give a scholarly description of that field, whether it's a cinema or it's a sport or whatever. He had that ability. He was, in fact, I would say, really a Renaissance scholar.
Thank you, Professor Gupta, for reminding us of his very important work on institutions besides inequality that everybody talks about. In my own formative years at Delhi School, he served as a mentor, and his work on universities was something that I have followed greatly. Now, may I invite?
I think one more point I'd like to make.
Yeah, yeah.
I think this point is also important and is in line with what I said a little earlier. In his view, individuals are very important. And
Yes.
individuals have rights. For groups, we don't have rights. For groups, we have policies. And we should look at groups in terms of policies. And the big mistake we make in India and elsewhere, by the way, especially in multicultural studies, is when we deem that groups should also have rights. He thought that was wrong way of looking at things. The proper analytical way would be to say, yes, individuals have rights, but when it comes to groups, we have policies. Therefore, these policies should not violate individual rights. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. I can see in the audience Professor Abhijit Das Gupta. May I invite Professor Abhijit Das Gupta to share his experiences with Professor Beteille?
Thank you, Nilika. Professor Beteille was my teacher when I joined the department in 1973. He was my PhD supervisor, and then he was my colleague. So I came to know him, and we had interacted him for a very long time, for nearly 5 decades. Now, I'd like to say a few things about Professor Beteille as a scholar, sociologist. First of all, I was thinking, who are the persons who influenced Professor Beteille, his writings? And to my mind, the person who had influenced him greatly was Professor N.K. Bose. He had written it in many places, and it was his fieldwork, the method of fieldwork, which influenced André Béteille, Professor Béteille a lot. So I would say that he was the first man. But I also agree with the view that he learned a great deal from him, but he didn't agree with all that Professor Bose had to say. For instance, he was not a Gandhian like N.K. Professor Bose. The second scholar that I have in mind who influenced Professor Beteille a great deal is eminent, which Professor Gupta mentioned. Again, you see that he was greatly influenced by eminent methods, particularly fieldwork. That fieldwork is an integral part of the discipline. But he didn't agree with eminent on many counts, particularly his views on functionalism, particularly the training that he had in Oxford from Radcliffe Brown or Evans Pritchard and others. I mean, Beteille was the last person to accept some of the theories that he learned in Oxford. The third person who Beteille never agreed and printed in some of his writings was Louis Dumont. And Dumont's views on Homo hierarchicus, which is very well known. So I'll not go into that, but I think it's important to note that he was particularly very critical of the way that the economists were writing about agrarian structure. Agrarian structure was something that really influenced his writings at the beginning in early 1960s, when he began his thesis in 1962, and when he published his first book in 1965, Caste, Class and Power. You can see that Beteille was writing all about agrarian structure. And from 1962 to 1965, all that he wrote, all his essays and books were on agrarian structure. And I come to this point because here you can see the difference that he had with economists like Professor K. N. Raj, Professor Amartya Sen, about the nature of class relations, which he tried to argue that what they were doing was very simplistic, in the sense that they really didn't try to follow the nature of holding structure or hierarchy. Particularly, they completely overlooked the debate on the size of holding. I mean, that is, the economics were talking a lot about size of holding, but he was trying to brought to our attention is what may be described as the control of land, who is doing what, the size, the use of land. So if you are talking about classes, you have to take into account a large number of factors. That was his point that he tried to make. But let me come to some non-academic, institutional part. Beteille wanted to see Delhi School of Economics as a vibrant, intellectually vibrant place. And he worked hard for this. And he had Emin Srinivas as head of the department. And there was V.K.R.V. Rao, who was the vice chancellor at the time when he joined in 1959. And he also found a colleague, Dr. B.N. Ganguly, as the director of the Delhi School of Economics. So these four persons really tried to give a new shape to the department, to sociology department in Delhi University. So this was the beginning. And then I think from 1975 onwards, Beteille worked on different areas, and particularly on institutions, tribes, and many other politics, affirmative action, and so on. So you can see he tried to diversify his field, and he wrote extensively on these different areas. So it's difficult to talk in a short time about huge contributions that he made during the last 5 decades. But I would like to say one thing, that Beteille was not only a scholar who wrote very extensively, but also a teacher. It's a role model for a teacher. He used to take class at 9 o'clock every day. Monday to Wednesday, without missing any class. He really covered each and every book in the syllabus and each and every topic. So I was thinking, what is the best way to pay tribute to a man like Professor André Béteille? And to my mind, if the younger generation, if the teachers commit themselves to teaching and to high standard of research, I think that will be the best way of paying tribute to Professor Beteille. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Professor Dasgupta. I think that was really useful and reminding the younger scholars of teaching as a vocation the way Professor Beteille did. May I now invite Professor Virginius Khaka, who was a long-time associate of Professor Beteille at Delhi School of Economics, to say a few words.
Professor Khaka, please unmute yourself.
Yeah. I just don't know because what to say about him. He had been my colleague almost from 1990 until he retired. So almost 3 decades. But he has been a wonderful human beings in terms of our conversations. You know, he would go out of the way to make you very at ease. And I think the conversations that we had at the School of Economics was extremely rewarding. in fact, when I look back, I find that I don't know is there any sociologist who had such a canvas on which he could write. And everything that he wrote, he came with a brilliant ideas, like a new lens, new perspectives for looking at the social reality. And we as others have really followed him and tried to, let's say, build on that. And in the sense that as a sociologist, I find him extraordinarily very, very different, setting standards, new ideas, looking at from an entirely different lens, and look at whatever, and you find that there's a certain kinds of connectivity in his ideas, starting from caste, class, and power to the studies against social structure, and then social inequality, then coming to the morphology of the social structure in terms of caste, tribes, peasants, work class, etc. As a person, I have, as a colleague, I have gained enormously, and my private conversations with him has also influenced me. In fact, whenever anything used to happen, let's say anywhere in the country, particularly in the rural India, he would always come and ask, "Oh, Virginius, what do you think of it?" And I would say that I don't know, that doesn't interest me, that's what I'm really working on. And he would always say, as a sociologist, you must be interested in all these things that are happening in the society. You can't just narrow it down to or confine yourself to certain kinds of things. And on those days when I still remember, particularly in 1990s, there were a lot of problems that were happening in rural India, conflicts, religious violence, the issues of Adivasis. And he will always ask me, what do you think of this is happening in the South Gujarat, or what is happening in this area? And he kept on nudging me to look more and more into much more wider range of issues. And it is through his nudging that eventually I moved to my engagement with the, what is called Adivasi studies or studies on tribes. He was largely responsible for it, not by forcing me into it, but just by raising questions. And I think that is what you really find in André. And as Abhijit was saying, I think he is a role model for everyone, as a researcher and as a teacher, a man of great integrity. People used to criticize him in the sense when I met elsewhere, people always will say about Beteille, he's very elitist. But I tell you that I have seen him as a colleague, and the way in which he would really like to help people who have come from disadvantaged sections of society is enormous. Sometimes we, as a progressive, we would come and we will, in terms of taking them, we are very progressive. But when students have gone through the disadvantages in terms of engaging with the courses, etc., I think André was very different. And therefore, he was, I would say, primarily very human persons and very ethical persons. And for anyone, us as a sociologist, I think he is something to be thought about, to be modeled our academics and our lives. Thank you.
Nilika, you are on mute.
Unmute yourself. Professor Nilika, unmute yourself.
Yeah, I'm so sorry. There's a connection problem at my end. Thanks very much, Professor Khaka. May I now invite Professor Jyotka to say a few words?
Yeah, thank you very much, Nilika, for asking me, and thank you, Professor Sahu, for organizing this. Current had gone here as well, so I was disconnected for a few minutes. Professor Beteille was obviously a very, very important person in our discipline. I grew up knowing of his work, and he was someone who one kind of looked up to. He wasn't my teacher, he wasn't my colleague. I got to know him very late in life, actually, when I became a faculty in Hyderabad University, had come to Hyderabad, and that's where we began to talk to each other. And then he kind of perhaps grew fond of me, and he would want me to keep in touch with him. Sometime he will call. I would also go and meet him after I shifted to Delhi. He also, in some sense, encouraged me to do certain kind of work, which I found very, in some sense, uh, happy about. I thought, that was in some sense a recognition of my scholarship as well. There are two, three things that I would like to say quickly because we don't have much time. First thing, I think what Professor Beteille did was he kind of expanded the domain of sociology. Professor Beteille comes soon after the first generation of sociologists like G.S. Ghurre, A.R. Desai, to some extent also M.N. Srinivas. And he is kind of a person who is studied in sociology department, even though M.N. Srinivas and A.R. Desai also had studied in sociology department. But I think Professor Beteille was exposed to literature on sociology much more than others were. And I think, as Dipankar said earlier, his kind of engagement with Max Weber, and he brings Max Weber to the study of Indian village and to Indian politics and stuff like that, comes from there. And I think he in some sense, shifted the focus of Indian sociology from the conventional social anthropology to a more kind of, multi-perspective oriented sociology as we practice today. And it is in that context, I think he also pushed the people who were doing village studies to start looking at agriculture from a different perspective. Agriculture was not only, in some sense, part of village life as village economy, but agriculture also had a wider kind of economic and social process. And I think his work on agrarian social structure and change was very significant kind of contribution. And that's where I began to kind of take Professor Beteille's work very seriously because that was my field of specialization. Likewise, he kind of moved the question of caste from study of caste and Weberian notion of class to also question of inequality. I think he edited a small book on inequality, and I think that again is something that we need to go back to and we need to kind of keep talking about it. The next thing I remember several times he told me during our informal discussions, whenever I met him and whenever we had time to discuss, he loved talking, he loved discussing with colleagues. And I remember one point he always underlined that we will become sociologists only when we start studying other societies. Indians are always studying India, and that will not make us sociologists. If we have to have a perspective of our own, so we need to not only study India, but we also need to study other societies. And I think that's a challenge. And if we have to take Professor Beteille's kind of contribution forward, this is our responsibility to, in some sense, train our students and draw from the work that Professor Beteille and others have done or we are doing to kind of conceptually think of India from Indian locations, from global locations, comparatively rather than exceptionally. We tend to think India is a kind of exceptional place and we have our own concepts, we have our own categories, and we think that India can be studied only through Indian categories. Caste, obviously, we think that, caste is an exceptionally Indian reality. So Beteille did not agree with that. That's why he brought in Max Weber. And I think this idea of comparative sociology is something that we need to take very seriously, that if we have to become sociologists, we have to work with larger kind of varieties of social formations. And finally, I think Beteille's kind of insistence on writing in newspapers was not simply because he wanted to become a popular person, or he was not somebody who wanted to do what is called as activist sociology. He was, as again Dipankar was saying, he was not really an activist kind of person. He did not want to immediately jump into kind of political processes, but that does not mean he did not take political positions on questions of institutional well-being. And I think he thought that sociology had something to offer. Sociology had something to offer to policy. Sociology also had something to offer to politics. Democratic politics is something in which intellectuals should actively participate. He also kind of participated in this discussion on the role of intellectuals and how intellectuals should contribute to the larger kind of process of society. Likewise, he was located in a university, and therefore he was also located in a larger kind of middle class universe, urban universe, and he thought, sociology had a perspective to offer. And these were very, very, very strong statements. These were not simply kind of, academic commentaries. He would take a position even on question of middle class. He had his own opinion, and these opinions were expressed very sharply. So he did not mind controversies. He did not mind taking positions which went against established ideas. So he was very happy to kind of express his opinions, articulate his opinions, create controversies. It is unfortunate that many of even his own students, because he was talking about reservation, using a particular kind of vocabulary, they thought he was a kind of conservative person. They would immediately kind of put a label on him and take his argument as his politics. And I think that was his politics, to kind of put forth an argument, and those arguments should become kind of arguments for deliberation, for discussion. And I think that's where democracy requires that kind of engagement. And all of us also, apart from being good teachers, we also have responsibility as citizens who are located in these positions of privilege, to think about what is happening in our society and think standing on our feet rather than taking positions with one political party or the other political party. And I think that's something which I think we can learn from Professor Béteille, and we can also kind of bring it to our craft, the way we think about sociology, the way we practice sociology, the way we want sociology to kind of, become a part of the larger world. Thank you very much. I think I'll stop here because there are many others who are also.
Thank you very much. May I now invite Professor Anuja Agrawal, who's the current head of the Department of Sociology at Delhi School.
Thank you, Nilika. Can everybody hear me? Yeah, thank you, Nilika. Thank you, Professor Sahu, for firstly organizing this memorial event, and also for inviting me on. And I would like to speak here on behalf of my department, where Professor Beteille spent almost all of his academic life, including till the very last date. He was Professor Emeritus with the department. Professor Beteille was also the first PhD of the Department of Sociology. So he had a very, very long association with the department. And ever since he passed away a little more than 1 month ago, so many tributes have been given. We also organized a memorial, and other memorials have been organized. And it's just a small indicator of, how much we are feeling the loss of his, passing away, and what kind of stature he enjoyed in our, academic world, not just of sociology, but way beyond it. But I would also say that he lived a good, long life, even though the later years of his life, we wish he had better health. So we should also celebrate his life, and not all of us expect to probably live that long. So in that spirit, I think all these meetings and tributes are an occasion for us to acknowledge the contributions that he made, and the times that we spent with him, the good fortune many of us had of the small or long times that we have spent with him. And I think I would just like to reiterate the very special relationship that the Delhi School of Economics Department of Sociology has had with Professor Béteille and will continue to have. I think this, in some sense, of course, not only he spent all his working life, he did his first, he was the first PhD, as I said, but it's almost impossible to think of Delhi School of Economics without thinking of Professor Béteille. And I would say vice versa, that, they're almost synonymous in some senses. Even today, And many times it has happened that, even to outsiders who are not part of our close community, if you mention that you are in Delhi School of Economics, people say, oh, André Béteille, that association of the institution with Professor Beteille has been a very close one. For the students and faculty of Delhi School of Economics, on whose behalf I speak here today, Professor Beteille is a legend, and not only as a great scholar, but as already reiterated by Professor Khaka, Professor Das Gupta, as a great teacher. His commitment to teaching, and the fact that even today, all his students, whether they are in the academia or whether they are elsewhere, remember him as this great teacher. This is something that we wish to, I think, reiterate, like others have already, and really, for those who didn't have the good fortune of being taught with by him, or ever being directly in relation with him of any kind, I think that is the message that we would like to carry forward. He is remembered as a great teacher. It's almost uncanny, just I want to end with sharing a very small anecdote of what happened just a couple of days prior to his passing away. I received a mail from somebody from America. I think either that person is an Afro-American or a Native American uh, person, who said he was at Delhi School of Economics 50 years ago, almost 50 years ago, and he was doing an MPhil with Professor Beteille and was unable to finish the MPhil because of health reasons. And can he come back and do his MPhil now? Of course, my answer was that that is not possible. And, he sent his regards for Professor Beteille. And, it's so uncanny that, this really happened just as we were getting the news of Professor Beteille passing away. So I think Professor Beteille will live on with us in so many ways. And, his association with Delhi School of Economics will never end. His spirit will always be with us. And that is something I think we should celebrate. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anuja, for reminding us again his contribution as a great institution builder. And I've seen the kind of care and affection and the respect he had for the department, not only the department, but also Delhi School of Economics. So I think from here we move to Professor Sukant Chaudhary for his few words.
Thank you very much, Professor Nelika. It is a great privilege to speak on Sir Professor Beteille. Just recently, somewhere I said all this. I'll just obviously share a few anecdotes, his writings and everything. I'm a 80-82 batch student. So the first anecdote is, obviously I'm from Odisha and I went there to appear in civil services. So most of the time we used to be there in the canteen. She would say, what is this happening, Sukanto? Sir, it is not Sukanto, it is Sukant. Sukanto. No, it's all right. Bengali is Sukanto, forget about it. Then he would say, why? I find two kinds of people here. One who attends classes, the other one who attends Ratan Tata Library. And you are always found here. What is this going on? I said, this is IAS business. You won't follow. So from there itself, the close association started. And we used to, before that I was in Barampur, Odisha. We read him a little bit, but there we came to know what has he written from the writings and the coursework. Then what happens, gradually he grew up to us, so we idolized him for a long period of time. Then when I joined here in 1991, I asked him that I have been asked to teach Indian sociology and comparative sociology. He would send me his articles with autographs and say, then we never used to talk on phone. it used to be in a post. So that was a great thing. It is not caste, class, and power. We have been doing all this. His works we have been referring to, and that is a must. Beteille is included in the Indian thinkers. But his students would always remember, most of his students are here. And when I say that I have had interactions with him, informal interactions, and when he retired, the interactions went up really much more, which some of you know about it. Two of his, not much read articles, I'll say, somewhere I also read them, spoke about it. One is judicial activism, public sociology, judicial activism. Why judges should decide, you would write like this, the main summary is, why judges should decide chemistry professor in some university recruited was wrong. But how do the judges know about the chemistry, about chemistry subject? How do they know? They don't report any this thing. So no, well, the academic standard of the articles was wrong. I mean, something like this. He said judicial activism is not good for India. This is a wonderful thing. And second one is priest and pontiff. This is a wonderful thing. Priest, those you read, those you write, those who are there for posterity, and that is André Béteille, and a pontiff. I mean, I'm just reinterpreting it. Pontiff. In Hindi, it is called Mathadis. Pontiff is very powerful, but not remembered. But then and there, the pontiff, he or she, captures everything. So that's a great thing. They are all found in chronicles of our times and ideology and sociology. All right. Then about Srinivas, I mean, in his later years, which he used to critically examine his own colleagues, his senior people, including Gurye, and his junior colleagues, and these days people, what they are doing, this cannot be sociology. This is not sociology. Something like this. I won't name them. So he said, greatly I admired Srinivas. I'm just reading it. Institution and Inequality, edited by SSC in honor of André Béteille. Greatly I admired Srinivas. I had begun to feel, even while I was writing my PhD thesis, that the theoretical focus of his work was too narrow. He wrote this. He had the gut of writing all this. So the point is, he has been a great teacher and a great source of inspiration, and we idolized him. And his close friend, I mean, instructional friend, Professor T.N. Madan, would always say he has been a great intellectual. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I also wanted to add a few articles to this list of readings that Professor Chaudhary has provided. One is on two articles actually on the relationship between sociology and social anthropology. I think those articles very clearly reflect that he was constantly thinking about the relationship. He had not taken the relationship as given, and setting his own trajectory uh, in relation to sociology and social anthropology. He makes very important insights. And the other is in terms of his work on intellectuals. Who are the intellectuals? And though we use this article often for our tutorial classes, but I feel that this very slim article has some nuggets, gems, and students ought to read those articles. So now, I had a long list of speakers. Now I invite any of you who would like to actually share, since we have around 10 minutes to go, share experience or inspirations from Professor Béteille. The floor is open.
My name is
Laksh.
Okay. Good evening.
Yes.
My name is Laksh Venkatraman. I am a faculty in Jindal, OP Jindal Global University. I revisited Professor Beteille's Sripuram village in the year 2010. So I started working with him. So, but somehow I have not studied here. So so it's like whenever I meet the eminent sociologists like Dipankar or anybody, I always feel that like I straight away began my career with grandfather, and I'm meeting my fatherly figures, something like that. So I'm very young in the age. So, but the way he made me comfortable, and also we used to meet in his house in Jobwalk almost thrice, like once in a month or at least twice a month, and long conversations over everything almost, and it was like a memorable. I wrote a short piece, but unfortunately Hindu didn't publish. But I'm reworking on it for EPW. But I don't know what else to say. But such a great life, and I really miss him dearly. Yeah.
Thank you, Laksh. So may I now invite Professor Gopa Sabharwal, who has been his student, actually the last PhD student, as she told us, to share her experiences. Gopa, you are on mute. You are muted. Please unmute yourself.
Still muted, Gopa. Please unmute yourself. Bueno, is it from the society side? Just check in case we can unmute her, or it is from her own mic.
I think it is her own
Yeah.
laptop. Gopa, you may try rejoining.
Or Bueno can also unmute. There is a provision, I think.
Is there a provision?
We can do it. Bueno, can you do that? Because that will save her from exiting and rejoining. Let me see.
Gopa wrote a few glossaries also.
So in the meantime, anybody else would like to make or say a few words in his memory till we wait for Gopa to recover her microphone. Gopa, please try to rejoin. You leave the meeting and rejoin.
Could I say a few words?
Yes, of course. Professor Vinod Jairath is there.
Yes, yes. Please do. Please do. Professor Jairath, please do.
By the time we resolve this, Gopa's.
Yeah, we are resolving Gopa's.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I joined the D school in 1971 for my MA. And I had come from engineering background, so I was a bit unfamiliar with everything. But I most remember that early morning because Professor Beteille always had the first class in the morning.
9 o'clock.
And I used to make it a point, to be there in time to attend his classes. But before the classes, he used to sit in the lawn with the students, with a group of students, sitting all around him and chatting in a very relaxed way. I think it was so important to experience that freedom to discuss with your teachers. It was very nice. He listened. He talked, and of course, all of us were always in awe of him. And so I think, and then to go walk into the coffee house, have a coffee or tea, and keep chatting, that was very, very important, part of that environment, at least of those times. That was 71 to 73. And I rejoined D School as faculty in 1986. And Professor Béteille and myself, we were next door neighbors. And he would sort of always casually walk in and then see, okay, what are you reading, Vinod? And then we get into a discussion. Uh, it was that very lively, liberal, relaxed environment of freedom to discuss and talk and exchange. I really cherish that so much. It was very important to me. I think there is not much time, so I should just stop here. Really miss Professor Béteille so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Jairat. I echo your sentiments because I spent around 4 years in Delhi school and I had the same experience in the late 90s of him being so accessible to students, faculty, friends alike. Such a rare quality that teachers of today probably have forgotten. So now
That's also true
I
about his
move to
writings. I mean, his writings were also accessible. Even when you're reading Professor Béteille,
absolutely,
you don't have to kind of
absolutely.
struggle, even though there are very, very difficult points he would make, but they are all very accessible. They're like conversations with the reader.
That reflects a great sense of clarity because unless you are clear in mind, you can't express that so clearly in writing. So now I move to Professor Gopa Sabarwal for her, experiences.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. The screen wasn't moving. So, since everybody's, thank you, Nilika and Professor Sao for organizing this. And as Anuja said, it's been a month. And well, one of the good things about that month is we've managed to hear so many different stories from so many people and, learn so much because, everybody had knew one version or one part of Professor Béteille. So for me myself, I joined the Delhi school in 85 as an MA student. But after that, from my MPhil, let's say from 87 to when he passed away, it's almost like, somebody who was in my life on a weekly, I mean, we met every week more or less. And, the contours of our relationship obviously changed from teacher, student to colleague to friendship, and then it almost became familial. But we know Jared just said that that Professor Béteille had these one-liners, and so apart from asking people what are you reading, but I think he expected everybody he met to be reading something or the other. For a long time, he would call me when I was a student, and he would say, "Are you working hard or hardly working?" And then sometimes I would say there's too much work, and then he would say hard work never killed anybody. So you couldn't make an excuse that you were too tired and you were not working, and college was driving you crazy. So I don't want to talk about his work ethic. We've talked about. I don't want to talk about his writing. I do think he was a university man in every sense of the word, and Anuja has said that. And I think part of it is that second generation of scholars really taking on the responsibility that they had to build the Delhi school and the department and make sure it was something that was, that became very solid and had those foundations. So I think in my, vis-a-vis my own work, obviously the fact that I was working on an idea like ethnicity, which again is a global idea, but not something that too many people in India were studying. I think that was something that excited him. He pushed me to work on Soviet ethnicity and brought that dimension into my work. And then I must say that, because we continued to be in touch, there was no compulsion about being in touch. It was ideas that brought us together. There was engagement in work. he was so sure that the monograph must come out. You shouldn't do no articles out of your PhD, the monograph first. But of course, I decided to write a book right after my PhD, and it had nothing to do with the monograph. And I was just taken up by this idea of writing this 1,000-year chronicle of India because social history was important. And he was totally involved in that while I was writing the book, categories, how was I dividing the years, what was I doing. And similarly, when I did anthropology on film, and I came back after the course and I said, can I film you? He allowed me to film his whole last week of retirement. I filmed his last lecture. I filmed his farewell function. I filmed the book release at IIC. As long as he was not distracted, he didn't, he was willing to play along and say, okay, I understand the technology. And then years later, I turned all of those things onto DVDs. So I think Alan McFarlane has the whole set. So it was that kind of relationship, on newspaper articles, even for us. I mean, we were students. There were no public intellectuals from academia. Few people were writing. Here was somebody who wrote. He wrote very accessibly. But he was very clear. Newspaper writing is important, but it cannot take over. It should not take away time from your academic work. But I think I can take some credit for Chronicles of Our Time being published because it took a lot of persuasion to tell him that, that we need to put those together and we need a book out. So I won, and then a lot of my later work, because I work on 47, N.K. Bose is there. I think we spend a lot of time discussing N.K. Bose in detail with his Gandhi engagement. But I'll just close with one trip I was able to make with him in 2014, which is I took him back to his boarding school in Patna. So while I was at Nalanda University, we invited him to give 2 public lectures. And since he was coming back to Patna, he said, I've never been back to the school. And I connected with the school in the evening before we went, we had dinner with the principal. And next morning, we spent a couple of hours really walking through the school and reliving our memories. He's written about it in his memoirs. It wasn't the greatest time of his life. But I think it was a really emotional and wonderful morning for him. So, this is just, it's just to give you a slice of the kinds of things all of us were doing with him. But, it's a huge lacuna for, at least for me, because this is somebody I was seeing very, very regularly. But thank you for doing this. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Gopa, for that intimate, description of your association with Professor Beteille. We are towards the end of the session. It's already 5:33. So I have to seek permission of the secretary to offer a vote of thanks. Would you do it, Arvinder, or should I do it on behalf of ISS?
We can do it. You can do it.
So, okay. So, it has
I will
been
also.
such a significant month personally for me, and also for the profession of sociology in the Indian context. At least personally, I have attended 4 meetings, and one learned about such beautiful memories, um, descriptions of his works, understanding and interpretations of his works. And this all goes on to show what a wonderful scholar, teacher, and mentor he was to so many of us and so many generations. I think ISS, this effort of organizing the memorial meeting is very significant because we are creating institutional memories. Through this meeting, we have created a memory, an archive for generations to believe that such scholars have existed in India and who have contributed so significantly to the profession, both in theoretical and empirical terms. we have Indian universities, public universities have produced such teachers, such great mentors who have created a legacy of, ideas to transmit, to flow from one generation to another. This has been an extremely learning experience for me, as well as I'm sure to others. So on behalf of ISS, I would like to thank everyone who made time to be here and, join in this collective recollection of Professor Beteille's memory and celebrating his legacy. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Nilika, for moderating.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. I was just thinking, Nilika, if we can get that Gopa, if she has done that film and can put it on our website, if it's possible, we have to see
Yeah,
that
I
would
have her
be-
number. I will pass it on to you.
Yeah. She's there, and if we could have that, and we can
Yeah.
also put that. So
Yeah, Gopa, are you still there? So we are making a request from the side of ISS, if you could provide that film. I also saw one documentary which I have to actually watch, which was done by Shiv Nadar University. And it is a 6 hours, interview with Professor Beteille. So that should also be part of our archives.
There are
Gopa is there. Gopa, yeah, we were wanting to know if you have that film, and we have to see, in terms of the size, and if we could put it, if it is possible, we'll see that.
I mean, and we have to check if Ashoka, the links are there. I have the link, and you could
Oh, good. That also serves the purpose. If we have the links also on the website.
Ashoka has 10 videos.
Okay.
And we played clips from that at the Delhi School Memorial.
Yeah, I was there. I saw that. Yes.
For my tapes, because they are on an old format and then they were converted into DVDs. So I have to just check with Alan McFarlane, or I have to see if we reconvert these, and we'll have to figure out where we put them or how, whether they need some treatment or whatever. So I'll check on how to do that. But right now, immediately, both what Dipankar did at Shiv Nadar and these are probably all available. So you could put links to those.
We seek their permission, and with their permission, we ask them to share the links so that we can put it for the wider circulation.
Yeah.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining this. And we have 3 more coming. We'll inform you there are the notice is already there for Professor T.K. Omen, Professor B.K.B. Nair, and Professor Bhargav. Thank you. 3 more memories.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah. Thank you.